So I appreciate you all joining us. And to our audience, we're so happy that you have joined us as well. We invite you to post your questions for our guests into either the chat area or there should be a Q&A tab on your screens. We are going to start with Renee Bess. So Renee, please tell us a little bit about yourself, about the book you'll be reading from, and you can begin reading your selection whenever you're ready to start. And I and the other authors will go ahead and turn off our cameras.
Good afternoon, everybody. To my sister writers, GCLS members and non-GCLS members. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I've been writing for probably most of my life, but seriously and for publication since 2007, I believe. I've written several novels. I am the co-story collector of an anthology. I worked with another writer, Lee Lynch. You might be aware of Lee's history in writing. And we developed a collection of poems and short fiction and also nonfiction called Our Happy Hours, LGBT Voices from the Gay Bars. After that, I sort of went dormant for a while, but I do have a very recently published book from which I'm going to read today. The book's title is Between a Rock and a Soft Place. And unlike my other books, which have been novels, this is a combination of poetry, short fiction, and creative nonfiction. I've only read from my novels before. So when I prepared for this, I thought, let me find a short story and read part of that. Then this week, I had the wonderful experience of watching a documentary on PBS. Documentary is called Mr. Soul, and it's about Ellis Hazlip, a gay Black man who in the late 1960s produced a weekly program called Soul. And Ellis had the gift of realizing there is a connection between music, the plastic arts, as well as the literary arts and politics. And that's what his show presented. I remember watching it every week and just being blown away, especially by the writers. And at that point, I was writing poetry, so I was very much encouraged to keep doing that. So that said, I have selected 3 poems from this book. My poetry tends to be either political or personal, but sometimes both. So I'm going to read a poem that shares the title of the book, and it is more personal than political. Title is Between a Rock and a Soft Place. Most days I face the wind and challenge its gusts to reshape me. I refuse to bend with its currents. Most days I confront the rain and dare the pebble-sharp drops to send me in search of shelter. I don't rust when I'm wet. Most days I stare defiantly at the sun and forbid it to sear my skin. I don't burn and blister under its white, hot heat. But once in a while, when I lower my gaze and turn my back, I feel a breeze caress my throat. I taste the raindrops that quench my thirst. I feel my soul ignite, courtesy of the golden rays, and I believe I am beautiful, if only for that moment. The next poem I'd like to share is political and personal. And the inspiration was watching the coverage this summer of so many people taking to the streets for Black Lives Matter. It reminded me of the political action that people took during the 60s and 70s. A big difference is that this past summer, the groups out there in the streets represented such diversity. And I thought with a coalition like that, we had to be successful. So this is called They're Back Again. And they is the people that I remember from the 60s and 70s out in the street. They're back again, the young ones who march, then leave their words strewn at our feet, hoping we'll read them since we refuse to listen. They're back again, the disaffected older ones who watch the marchers, then saunter to Facebook and write, I've seen all this before. Where did it get us?
Is she controlling the mute?
They're back again, the oldest ones who've seen quite enough, but still inhale equality and exhale their hopes entwined in poetic syllables. They're back again, all the ones who believed a poem could make us dance and turn the world toward kindness, if only for one generation. They're back again, spending their poems like there's no tomorrow, charging their efforts to a credit card of words stacked against the costs of moral poverty. They're back again, welcome them back. And the third poem that I'll share is again both personal and political. It's called All the Different People I've Been, in polite terms, of course. Female infant, colored. Female student, Negro. Female college undergrad, Black. Female grad student, Afro-American. Female teacher, African American. Retired educator, person of color. Writer, BIPOC. The mind fractures in response to which box to check. Other minds become spinning wheels set to stop at Spanish-speaking, Hispanic, Mestizo, Chicano, Dominican, Rican, Boricua, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Cajun, Creole, Geechee. Why is it that all of this time, those who label us have remained simply white? Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Renee. That was so just wonderful. Thank you. So my question for you is, what inspired you to write a collection of short stories, poetry, and creative nonfiction, especially when you have written novels previously? We'll just have you turn your
Sorry, I'll start again. Okay. My first love was poetry. My second love was writing short stories. And my third love, I guess, is writing novels. When some of those things shut down, as they have from time to time with me, I've been lucky enough to find something else. And that something else was the creative nonfiction that I've been writing for 2 or 3 years now for Women in Words. So I guess it's simply, I love to write. I can't stop writing. You know, you can retire from some things, but I think writing is difficult to retire from. And so I just keep going in whatever direction I'm going, as long as I'm having the thoughts and putting them down.
Oh, well, we are so very thankful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I do love your Women in Words blog that you had, the post that you put out there. And one of them really mentioned or really delves into women of color and being published. And you provoke a lot of interesting questions in that, and I do appreciate that. So I highly recommend everyone to read Renee's blogs if you haven't done so already. So your work is so inspiring and thought-provoking, and thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for hosting this, Maria, and thank you for the kind words.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so up next, oops, so we'll have Regina Jameson with us coming up next. So if you are here with us, could you please introduce yourself and talk about your debut novel, Choosing Grace? And you can feel free to start reading whenever you're ready. And I and the other authors will make sure that our cameras are off and that we're muted.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to start my camera, but it says that I can't start my video.
Okay, we'll get that switched over here in just a second.
Okay. So, yeah,
We'll have
I
you
guess
try it once more.
okay.
There
Okay,
you
there we
are.
are.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us. We are so grateful to have you here. And like I said, if you can introduce yourself and tell us about your book and your reading.
Okay, my name is Regina Jameson, and my book, Choosing Grace, is my debut novel, published by Bella Books, and it's a story about a coming out story, really, that takes place in 1986. A girl has moved from Durham, North Carolina, to New York, to the Bronx specifically. And I just wanted to read one chapter from there, from my book, and I will begin now. I cannot stop thinking about the two of them together. Thought about it all the way home on the train. Thought about Grace lying to me. Why didn't she just tell me about her and Ola? Why was she trying to keep it a secret? It didn't make sense because eventually I was bound to find out. Someone would have spilled the beans, and someone had. Maybe her plan was to play me like Ola warned. Whatever her reasons, I couldn't help but feel betrayed. The bedroom was cold. I had unplugged the fan and put the air conditioner on full blast before we left the house. I pulled the comforter up over my ears and watched as the curtains bobbed up and down, trying to run away from the current torrent of air that poured from the machine. Grace was still in the bathroom. I was tucked tightly under the covers, but my head was in the clouds, grasping for the right words to confront her. I heard the water that poured from the faucet of the bathroom sink stop. The light switch clicked, and Grace stepped into the bedroom. She was still dressed. "What are you doing?" "I thought you were going to take a shower," I said. The room was almost dark, but a large street lamp just outside the house was bright enough to allow slivers of light to enter the room through the curtains. Lines of light illuminated Grace's eyes, making them glow like cat eyes. She's so beautiful, I thought. Then I recalled that I was supposed to be mad at her. "Yeah, well, I've been thinking." "About what?" I inquired. "I think I'll stay at my place tonight." I sat up. "Really? Why?" "I'm not sure about this, about us." "Really? Since when?" "You seemed very sure just a few hours ago," I said. "Oh, wait, I see. The chick with the bald head and big earrings changed your mind, huh?" I folded my arms across my chest as I tried to control my anger and disbelief. "Bald chick with big earrings? Who are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Grace. The woman who sat at our table at Pandora's. The one you were chatting and laughing with while I danced with Ola, which you so conveniently condoned." "You mean Yvonne?" "I don't know her name, but I saw you smiling like the cat who ate the canary while the two of you were yucking it up." Grace laughed softly. "I've known Yvonne for years. And no, she's not the reason. You are." "Me?" "Yes, you," Grace said. She walked over and sat at the edge of the bed, her back toward me. "What on earth did I do?" I'm feeling weird about what you told me this afternoon." "And what did I tell you?" I was puzzled. We'd been drinking so much over the past few days that I was not exactly 100% sure about anything I might have done. "About you being married." "Almost married," I yelled a little too loudly. "Yeah, well, almost married. But you stayed with that guy for a while, though, right? I mean, you said you were just with him for appearance's sake, trying to pose as straight and that you were wait, you were afraid to come out to your family? I'm just not sure I'm ready to go back there again. Back where again? Back to dealing with someone who's not ready to be who she is. Someone who can't stand tall and proud and tell the world that she's gay. Oh, I said. I felt the tears as they gathered inside of me. Grace stared at the swatch of floor between her feet. Then she put her head in her hands. It's just that now, at this point in my life, I'm used to being with women who are totally out. And I'm used to dealing with people who are totally honest. Why did you lie about your involvement with Ola? What? Grace asked. Her head snapped in my direction. What are you talking about now, Sky? Ola told me that you two were romantically involved. It wasn't nothing like you claimed it to be. She said you two were together for around a year. I needed to fight fire with fire, let her know I knew and that I wasn't an idiot pushover that she could play. Romantically involved, huh? Is that what she said? Yes, she did. There was nothing romantic about it, Grace huffed. We were just friends with benefits. Well, that's not Ola's version of the situation. Who cares what Ola said? One thing has nothing to do with the other. I need for you to be clear about who you are and what you want. I don't want us to say we're a couple, and then a few minutes later you turned around and tell me that you're in love with some guy. I wouldn't do that. I'm sorry, but right now, I feel that is a huge possibility. It's also possible that your ex-husband or whatever he is will try to track you down and win you back. You said life would be easy with him. He has money. He can give you things I can't. Who knows? Things could get hard for you here, and he'd be your ticket out. So that's what you think of me, that I'm looking for an easy way out. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I was sad and angry at the same time. I wanted to hit Grace and hug her, then tell her that I was crazy about her. But she walked to the window. I'm not saying you're weak or that there is a certainty that that's what you do, but I am saying that I'm a little uneasy about the whole thing. I need time to think. Grace's words hurt. I'd uprooted my whole life, left everything behind, and was here taking a chance on everything. I hadn't taken the easy way. I had rolled the dice and made my move. But I guess in the end, for Grace at least, it just wasn't enough. I lay down and slipped back under the covers. You can let yourself out, I said. My voice was shaky yet stern. Grace was quiet. She didn't say anything, nor had she made a move for several seconds. Then I heard her as she quietly moved toward the bedroom door. Good night, Sky, she muttered softly. There's nothing good about it, I shouted back. And that's the end of that chapter.
Oh, that was so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Regina.
Thank you.
Let's see. So the question I have is, well, I really enjoyed reading your poems because you are a poet as well. So I've read Daddy's Love and Mother/Seamstress, which I thought was wonderful. So similar to my question to Renee, who sort of had the opposite experience in the publishing path. So what helped you decide to take the leap into going from poetry to writing and publishing a novel?
Poetry was what I started with, was my first love. And then I guess I just needed a bigger container to put my words in, let's say. And I started writing poetry and then short stories and then novels. I had like novels in mind, even though I was like a novel, wow. How am I going to get that out? But I just kept at it and lots of reading and encouragement. So that was what how I did that.
Well, as I am beginning to read your novel, I'm really so glad that you've made that decision. I look forward to reading the rest of your work. So thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.
So hopefully you'll still stay with us. While up next, we have wonderful poet and previous GCLS board member, Mercedes Lewis. So we'll have Mercedes come on as we turn off the rest of us turn off our cameras and mute ourselves. So Mercedes, are you with us right now? Just want to make sure we have you here and you're able to turn your camera on and unmute yourself.
I'm here.
Hi, Mercedes.
Hi.
All right, so I just want to make sure that you're able to turn your camera on. We have
Oh,
some people working in the background to get that going too. Oh,
okay,
wonderful.
there we go.
So Mercedes, thank you and welcome. Thank you for joining us. So if you could please tell us a little bit more about yourself and about the work you'll be reading from, and then you can start reading whenever you are ready.
All right, thank you. I am Mercedes Lewis. I've been a member of GCLS since 2005. Been to every conference, including the virtual one. Was encouraged to write through the GCLS. I have a body of work. My first actually published piece was in Women in Uniform. And then I did poetry in Roses Red. This is great for Valentine's Day anniversaries or just celebrating with the one you love. And then I did my standalone Glimpses of a Fractured Soul with Regal Crest, now Flashpoint Publishing. And lastly, thanks to Renee and Lee Lynch, I have poetry and a short story in Our Happy Hours, LGBT Voices from the Gay Bars. Currently not writing a whole lot, and I will ask you to excuse me, I'm completely discombobulated. I couldn't find the link, I was almost late. I can't find what I was gonna read, but we'll be okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and start reading. The first piece is called Her Story. It's from the book Glimpses of a Fractured Soul. Too black to be white, too white to be black. No zipper to get out of the skin she's in. Nope, neither side has been easy. Where does she fit in? Where does she stand? She can tell you about the Black child feeling motherless. She can tell you about the Black girl feeling lost. She can tell you about the Black woman finding a way to make it work. She can tell you about the Black female soldier hiding in plain sight. She can tell you about the Black mother full of pride and fear. Oh God, the fear. She can tell you, looking into a mirror darkly, that there is peril on both sides. On one side, she has a drug addiction problem. They said, I never expected this from you. She said, do you really think it was part of my 5-year plan? One side, she is a crackhead. They never expected it either. Too black to be white, too white to be black. No zipper to get out of the skin she's in. Nope, neither side has been easy. Where does she stand? On either side, she is timid yet strong. On either side, there is love and loss, laughter and tears, fears and hope. Too black to be white, too white to be black. No zipper to get out of the skin she's in. Nope, neither side has been easy. Where does she stand? Why must she choose a side? Why must anyone? Why must we wrestle with ourselves and others? Too black to be white, too white to be black. No zipper to get out of the skin she's in. Nope, neither side has been easy. Where does she stand? When can we just be? Thank you. That is from my book of poetry, Glimpses of a Fractured Soul. This other piece is newly written, a work in progress, celebrating Black History Month, my ancestors and descendants, and several other people whose voices you will recognize. And many of you, or anyone who's seen me on Facebook, will recognize this title from my Facebook avatar thingy. Is this thing on? I am reminded yet again, I am not of this world. However, I am in this world, for this world, compelled, encouraged, and determined to change this world. For if we cannot conquer ourselves in this world, how can we be trusted with another? Perhaps this is why we have yet reached the promised land. Is this thing on? 500,000 people dead, families evicted, children unfed, another brown body laying at their feet, a nation sequestered, unable to meet. Don't get it twisted. I'm not seeking revolution. I examine each face for signs of evolution. When will we evolve? Is this thing on? Each day breaks anew in hopes that some will have a different view, but thousands of lone wolves sought to kill and steal, looking to uplift their own New Deal. Never mind the people's will, the will of the people who wanted to heal. Lies, deceit, placebos to numb the pain, some in despair, feeling there's nothing to gain. So many give up, so many lie down, so many faces locked in a perpetual frown. Is this thing on? Keep the faith, walk in the light. Don't succumb to the darkness of the night. Can we though? Yes. One day when the glory comes, one day when the battle's done, one day, one day, one day. So one day, no longer awaiting awakening, we rise up, having dreamed the dream, knowing why we sing, keeping our eyes on Him. We climb the hill, remembering Grandma's hands, remembering Grandma's words. There is nothing new under the sun, child. All things, even good, in moderation. Are we chocolate covered ants? Are we mice? Are we men? Are we human? Is this thing on? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercedes. That was so powerful and beautiful and so very wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So a question I have for you. No. So in your author bio that is found in your book, Glimpses of a Fractured Soul, you note that, and this was news to me, that you served in the military for over 20 years and that you were one of the first women to attend the United States Military Academy, West Point, which I think is astounding. But West Point educates and prepares cadets for commission as officers in the U.S. Army. I believe it's the Army, correct?
Correct.
And could you tell us if and how these experiences have influenced your writing?
Okay. I hope I didn't put in that I attended. I put that I was accepted.
Oh, okay.
Right.
And
Okay.
even so, that's still wonderful.
And to condense the story, long story short, my grandmother was alive at that time, and you know how I feel about grandma and her hands and her words, and she felt that I could do anything. And I was accepted into West Point the first year that they were allowing females into West Point. And I sold my car, got rid of my apartment, sent my nephew, whom I was raising home, and was sitting in the orderly room of the WAC Shack, Women's Army Corps, waiting to go to West Point. And my commander came in and advised me that I would not be going because I have asthma. Now, I had been in the Army for 2 years at that point, had excelled at all of the physicality and everything, and I'm already in the Army. So I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. I'm already in the Army and excelling. Anyway, long story short, and cutting off my own nose, perhaps, I got really upset with them. And so when they came back the next year and offered me the position again, realizing their error, my grandmother had passed away and I had a chip on my shoulder and told them they could keep it. And I went the enlisted route and did make it all the way to E8, which is the highest enlisted rank, promotable to sergeant major actually. And I don't think I lost anything going that route. I think that, as my grandmother used to say, we make plans and our steps are ordered. So I think that's the way I was supposed to go.
Well, your grandmother sounded like she was such a wise woman, and I am again awed by you. I didn't know you. I knew there was a military background, but I didn't know to what extent and how far you made it up in the ranks. So,
Yeah,
uh,
and I just recently
that's
read you have 20 plus in the Navy. My
I
father was in the
do, I
Navy.
do.
He was
Oh,
very
really?
upset when I joined the Army.
Oh, that happens a lot, and we have to take our own paths
We
and
do.
hug each other anyway. So.
Yeah, yeah.
But thank you so much, Mercedes. I know I can speak for the rest of GCLS. Continue to be inspired by your work, both on the page and your tireless efforts for the organization,
Stop trying to make
especially.
me cry. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
you've just been so wonderful. And I know that you were one of the first board members, first people within GCLS that I met when I first became involved with the organization. So I still remember that day. And I know all of our, those that are always new to our annual conferences, you have such a big hand in making those people feel so special and welcome. So, including
That is one of my greatest
you.
accomplishments. I think one of my greatest accomplishments at GCLS was the ducks that I had for my
I love the
conversion.
ducks.
Yeah,
So,
it spiraled out of control. It was for my virgins, and then all of a sudden, everyone wanted a conduct. So, but
yeah,
it's been a joyous journey, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm glad to be a part of the organization.
oh, thank you so, so much. And thank you for joining us today. And I hope you'll stay on for some of the questions that will happen towards the end
I
of the.
will.
So thank
Thank
you.
you.
All righty. So next we have Anne Shade. So Anne, if you can go ahead and turn your camera on and unmute yourself, and then you can introduce yourself, and I'll get off the screen here in just a moment, and you can talk about your new novel, Masquerade. So you can please start reading whenever you are ready, and welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Ann Shade. I am very thrilled to be here with such illustrious authors. And I will be reading from my current novel, Masquerade. And I've actually about to celebrate the 1 year anniversary of my first novel with Bold Stroke Books, Femme Tales. So I hope you enjoy this. Masquerade is a historical romance that takes place during the Harlem Renaissance. Both characters are of African American descent. That's very important to me to have all my characters be of women of color. And this takes place during the Harlem Renaissance, 1925. And the main character, Celine, is basically, this is her coming out story. And she has encountered a woman that is going to change her, pretty much her life. But she's encountered her at a drag masquerade ball, which during that time, drag balls were extremely popular in Harlem. And she's met this woman, both wearing masks, but only one of them knowing who the other is. Dinah is the other woman. She knows who Celine is, but Celine doesn't know who she is. And they've met at this masquerade, and they've run into each other since then. And Celine thinks that she knows that Dinah is Sable, but she actually finds out for sure when her aunt takes her to a club where Sable is dancing. And Sable comes onto the stage and pretty much performs the same dance that she did at the masquerade. So in this scene, Dinah and Sable, Dinah's in backstage changing. She knows Celine's there. and Celine comes backstage to confront her about what happened at the masquerade, which at the masquerade, she kissed her, and it was her first kiss, and she's just wondering if this was all kind of set up. After her performance, Dinah stood in her dressing room, beaming at her reflection in the mirror as the costume assistant helped her undress. Before every performance, she liked to watch a few of the previous entertainers to gauge the crowd's mood for that evening. During the opening performance, she spotted a particularly lively table near the stage. It was Celine's group. She was going to have to make a point of stopping by Celine's table first when she went out to mingle with the customers. The costume assistant left, and Dinah sat at her dressing table, carefully reapplying her makeup so that she looked good when she saw Celine. There was a knock at the door, and, thinking it was the assistant with her next outfit, told whoever it was to come in. She looked up at the mirror as the door slowly opened, and Celine stood in the doorway. Neither said a word as their eyes locked in the mirror, and Celine walked into the dressing room, closing the door behind her. Dinah stood watching Celine's reflection as she came up behind her. Except for the absence of their masquerade garb, their image in the mirror was the same as it had been that night. Celine standing behind her with their gazes locked. "You knew who I was that night, didn't you?" Celine asked. Dinah turned to face Celine. "Yes." "Did my aunt have anything to do with what happened?" "No, and I hope you're not angry at me." "Not angry, just curious," Celine said. "About?" Dinah reached up to run a finger along Celine's delicate jawline. "You," Celine said breathlessly. "What can I do to help you appease your curiosity?" "Tell me why I can't stop thinking about you. Tell me how a glance from you can set me on fire." Dinah ran the pad of her thumb across Celine's full lips. "Those are questions I've been trying to answer since I first saw you at your aunt's shop." Celine's eyes fluttered closed, and she shuddered in response to the intimate touch. Dinah brought her hand up to the nape of Celine's neck and pulled her close. "What would you do if I were as bold as you the night of the masquerade and kissed you?" Celine didn't respond. Their lips were so close, Dinah could feel Celine's soft breath mingling with her own. Then a curt knock and the dressing room door flying open halted them from going any further. Celine stepped away, keeping her back to the door as Dinah struggled to close her dressing robe. "Curtis, how many times do I need to ask you to stop coming in without my permission?" Curtis, the club's owner, stood in the doorway looking from one to the other. "How many times do I need to remind you that this is my joint, and I don't need permission to do anything at my joint? You got a room full of people waiting to see you, so unless you can pay me for the time you're wasting in here, instead of being on the floor making me money, I suggest you get out there." Dinah hated Curtis Flynn. If she didn't need the money, she would have quit right then and there. "I'll be out in 5 minutes. 3, not a minute longer." He sent a final glance at Celine's back before leaving. Dinah looked at Celine. "Are you all right?" "Seems we keep getting interrupted. Maybe somebody's trying to tell us something." "What, that we need to find a more private place to meet?" Dinah joked. "Not exactly what I was thinking." "Celine, if someone thinks we shouldn't be together, then why do we keep coming together like this? Why do we have the feelings we do for each other?" Celine didn't answer. Dinah took her hands. "Meet me tomorrow. Anywhere. You pick the place. We'll talk, and if you still feel like what's happening between us shouldn't happen, then we'll never speak again." Another knock on the door interrupted them. This time it was Dinah's assistant, letting her know she had 2 minutes. "Okay. Meet me at the shop tomorrow at 1. It's closed on Sundays, and my aunt spends the afternoon at our house, so we'll have some privacy." Celine hesitantly released Dinah's hands and turned to leave. "Celine?" "Yes." Dinah walked over to her and placed a soft kiss on her lips. "See you tomorrow." Celine nodded and left the dressing room. After the club closed, Dinah stopped by Curtis's office to pick up her pay. She hoped Lenny, the club's manager, was there instead of Curtis. After he had barged in on her and Celine, he had watched her like a hawk the rest of the night. She also caught him watching Celine and Olivia's table just as intently. Dinah hoped he would let the incident drop, but she had a feeling he wasn't going to. Curtis Flynn was the type of man who loved knowing other people's secrets. Knowing secrets was what kept his bootleg business afloat while his competition was being shut down all around him. As Dinah drew closer to the office, she could hear Lenny talking and sighed with relief. But it was short-lived when she realized he was talking to Curtis. "Well, if it isn't our star, we were just talking about you," Curtis said. Curtis, I'm too tired for this foolishness. Can I just get my money and go home? Curtis's gaze narrowed on Dinah. Go handle that business I told you about, he said to Lenny without taking his eyes off Dinah. Lenny nodded, then headed toward the door. He gave Dinah a warning look as he passed. When she looked back at Curtis, he was watching her intently. You seem to be getting a little too uppity lately. Maybe it's time for Sable to retire and one of the other girls to take over as featured dancer. Cora and Ruth have been eyeing your spot for some time. There was no hint of his casual smug expression, so Dinah knew he was serious. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. She hoped the apology would be enough to appease his anger. His eyes narrowed again, as if trying to peer right through her. Dinah knew that look all too well. She had seen him give it to others who had pushed him one step too far. She'd never had it turned on her until now. Don't forget who pulled you out of that rat-infested juke joint down the block where you were nothing but a hoochie-coochie girl. I'm sorry, Curtis. She tried sounding more sincere this time. His smug expression returned as he came around his desk toward her. He gently grasped her chin and raised her head. You're my moneymaker, Di. I would truly hate to lose you, but don't try me like that again. Dinah nodded in agreement, hoping he didn't see the cold disgust she felt for him. Curtis gazed at her for a few moments, then released her chin. He reached back to pick up an envelope off his desk. There's a little something extra in there for entertaining the table of the mayor's brother-in-law. The mayor's brother-in-law tonight. It should keep them off our backs for a little while. Thank you. Dinah took the envelope and turned to leave. By the way, congratulations on getting that job at Harlem Hospital. That stopped her short. She hadn't told anyone but her aunt and Fran about that job. Thank you, she said before hesitantly leaving the office. Curtis, knowing about her new job, could only mean one thing. He had one of his thugs watching her. The thought of that brought a chill down her spine and had her wondering what he was up to. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. My question is kind of referring to another interview that you had, and that was with Bold Strokes Books, which is your publisher. And there you talked about why you chose the 1920s for this novel.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned a phrase called the pansy craze.
Yes.
And the success and popularity of drag balls during that era. So my question is, if you could tell us a little bit more about this and how that it helped inspire you writing this book.
Well, during that time, there was a little more freedom, not just within the African American community, but also within the LGBTQ community, to a point though, because it was still illegal to be gay. It was still illegal to be in a relationship with the person of the same sex. You could get put in jail, you could get put in the crazy house, which most women were. Men were put in jail, women were put in insane asylums because they're thinking there was something wrong with them. But it became a fashion statement to have a gay friend. It became a fad. It became a fad to be able to go to Harlem or to the Village and hang out at spots where the LGBTQ community held, where there were drag shows and drag balls. So that fascinated me, that dichotomy of it was wrong, but so right at the same time. And to be able to not only bring that culture and rich history in, but to also bring our culture and history from that period in was important to me. She has a second love interest in it, who's a gangster. And believe it or not, a lot of people didn't know there were Black female gangsters back then. There's so much history and especially within the LGBTQ community and the Black history community that I just wanted to kind of mingle it all in one spot.
Well, I'm so glad you did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for telling us about this fascinating time and what inspired you. I know right now Masquerade is next on my to-be read list, and I'm so very excited for this book. So thank you very much, Anne, and I hope again you'll stay on with us to answer some questions from the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so up next, we will have Yolanda Wallace. Yolanda, if you can come on up and turn your camera and unmute yourself, we'll be delighted to see you here on the screen. And if you can also kindly introduce yourself and your novel, Tailor Made, and you can start your reading from your selection whenever you are ready.
Okay. My name is Yolanda Wallace. I also write as Mason Dixon. The book I'm reading today is from Tailor Made. It is several years old, but it's actually one of my favorites of mine because I love a woman in a suit. And I was watching a documentary on HBO called Suited about a company in Brooklyn that makes suits for women and transgender individuals. So I dropped the project I was working on and started working on Tailor Made instead, and it just flowed out of me. So what I'm reading today is from the first chapter when the characters first meet each other. Grace Henderson drummed her fingers on the fabric-strewn cutting table while she waited impatiently for her tardy prospective client to deign to make an appearance. I've had it up to here with entitled athletes and self-absorbed celebrities who are more concerned with hanging out with their entourages and expanding their brands than they are about the things that really matter, she said, venting her frustration. She pushed the container of straight pins away from her so she wouldn't be tempted to throw it across the room. Being forced to clean up the mess would make her even angrier than she already was. I have better things to do than sit around waiting for some cut-rate Chrissy Teigen to careful. Lily Washington looked up from the blazer she was mending and stared at Grace over the tops of her half-moon glasses. If you get too steamed up, you're bound to sweat out that perm you pay good money for. Grace unconsciously reached up to pat her chemically straightened hair as she stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror across the room. I should just go natural. It's much cheaper and the upkeep requires far less maintenance. You've been threatening to cut your hair since you were knee-high to a grasshopper and still haven't done it yet. Lily made the final stitch on the mended seam and briefly paused to admire her handiwork. I got a pair of scissors right here if you're willing, if you're feeling brave. Grace turned away from the mirror. Perhaps some other time. I've heard that before. Lily smiled knowingly. Who are we waiting for again? Dakota Lane. Lily put her hands on her ample hips. That skinny white girl who looks like she could use a double cheeseburger and an extra large order of fries? Grace nearly choked on a bottle of water. Dakota Lane was a woman who worked primarily as a male model. Image of her wearing men's suits, flirting with scantily clad women, and showing off her washboard abs while she modeled designer briefs have been appearing in print ads, on billboards, and on the tabloids for the past several years. Grace has seen several adjectives used to describe her: mysterious, androgynous, butch, gender fluid, and smoking hot were the most frequent terms bandied about. But Lily's description was certainly the most colorful. No wonder you walk around as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs, Lily said. We don't get many women in here. When we do, it's usually church ladies from the neighborhood ordering something special for Easter Sunday, not someone who makes women, even straight ones, want to drop their drawers. Is Dakota your type? I don't have a type. Child, please, everyone has a type, whether they want to admit it or not. Sometimes, though, those preferences are subject to change. Take me, for example. I like my man tall, dark, and handsome, but I'll take short, light, ugly as sin as long as he treats me right. When the downstairs buzzer sounded, Grace walked over to the intercom mounted on the wall and pressed the speaker button. Yes? Hi, I have an appointment. I'm sorry I'm late. I had a problem at work. A problem at work, Lily said. Did you forget how to smile or something? Grace hastily pulled her hand away from the speaker button. Shh, she might hear you. Lily furrowed her brow. A few minutes ago, you wanted to wring her neck. Now you act like she's your best friend. Grace wouldn't go that far, but she had to admit Dakota sounded stressed and sexy as hell. As she reached for a notebook and pen, Grace tried to scrub the images Lily's comment evoked from her mind. She had seen Dakota's name in the gossip columns more than once, but she didn't know if those mentions were by accident or design. If the columns were to be believed, Dakota was a train wreck waiting to happen. Each time she picked up a newspaper or a tabloid that featured a mention of Dakota within its pages, Grace mentally prepared herself for the collision. Dakota was tall, 6 feet if she was an inch, long-limbed, and gifted with broad shoulders that tapered to her narrow waist. A suit would hang wonderfully on her, whether tailor-made or off the rack. She was working as a bike messenger when a scout from one of the leading modeling agencies saw her parked at a traffic light one afternoon. The scout liked what he saw, ordered his cabby to follow her to the site of her next delivery, and offered her a contract on the spot. She had been working steadily as a model ever since, but she evidently hadn't given up her day job because she was still dressed head to toe in cycling gear and had the mangled remains of a lightweight road bike draped over one shoulder. Am I in the right place? Dakota removed her bicycle helmet and tucked it under one smoothly muscled arm. The muscles in her corded thighs and cut calves were even more well-defined. Grace dragged her gaze away from the view as Dakota continued speaking. I emailed a few days ago to schedule an appointment for a fitting. I got a reply directing me to come today at 5:30. Grace pressed her lips together to prevent herself from pointing out that 5:30 had come and gone. Yes, you've come to the right place. I'm Grace Henderson, and this is Lily Washington, our best seamstress. Dakota reached out to shake her hand, but Grace left her hanging, when she noticed a large scrape on Dakota's right knee and the trickle of blood sliding down her shin. Are you all right? Dakota looked down, apparently unfazed by the sight of blood pooling her expensive-looking cycling shoe. I'm fine. What happened? A cab driver sideswiped me while I was making my last delivery. Lily shook her head. I don't know what you're trying to deliver, child, but let FedEx handle it next time. Ain't no package worth getting killed for. Dakota shrugged. Just one of the risks of the job. Ain't you still willing to take that risk, considering everything you have at stake? Grace asked. Her heart skipped a beat when Dakota turned to look at her. Dakota's eyes were arresting. One was brown and the other was blue. Both seemed to peer past Grace's exterior into her soul. Despite what you might have heard, Dakota said, I'm more than just a pretty face.
Oh, very wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your reading and your talent with us.
Thank you.
So while I was reading the praise for your book, I noted that several reviewers expressed their appreciation for the diversity and gender expression shared in this story. And I wanted to know if you could share with us how you were inspired to write this book and in that fashion.
Well, like I said, I watched it. The documentary suited. The company is owned by a woman, well, a man and a woman, and their clients are mostly trans clients. So the trans clients come in to get a suit or a dress or whatever that actually matches how they feel inside, and they want to have that as the outside expression. And I took a trip to Seattle too for a reading that was held out there, and we had a panel on gender in romance, and most of the questions were about how different characters are presented, if they're male, female, male, male. So that kind of opened my eyes to the whole thing, that, it's not just women loving women or men loving loving men. There are different expressions of gender out there. So I wanted to explore that. I hope I did a good job with it. It was my first time, so I had to get all the terms down, but I had fun writing it.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm really excited to finish this book. I started reading the first chapter, and because this book was new to me, and I had a hard time putting it down in order to make it in time for this event. So
that's what I want to hear.
So thank you so much. And I'm really excited to hear, or I'm happy to know that there are such shops as that can that you have written this book, and that many people can see themselves in this book. So thank you. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Providing that representation. Okay, so next up, and actually last and definitely not least, we will have Fiona Zed up reading for us next. So Fiona, if you can share put your camera on and unmute yourself and go ahead and introduce yourself, your novel that you'll be talking about, Femme Like Her. And you can start your reading whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Maria. And thank you for having me. My neighbors are doing lots of weird things, so hopefully y'all can't hear too much of what's going on next door. But I'm Fiona Zed, and I am a hybrid author. I self-publish, and I also publish with a few other publishers out there. I've been writing, I've been published since, what year was that? 2003, maybe? Something like that. And I've written about 30 books under various names, queer and straight. And yeah, I'm just really happy to still be able to write and still have an audience and still enjoying my work. So my new book, Femme Like Her, just came out, in December. And it is about a woman who clings really fiercely to this femme identity And we discover during the course of the novel, like why she clings to this identity. And then also too, it's identity she clings to the detriment of her love life. And so she has to learn to define herself and also to find happiness with self and also with the kind of lover that she actually genuinely wants. So I'm going to read the first, just the opening, which is also a short story that was published prior. And the short story was actually later on the inspiration for the novel itself. And so, yeah, femme like her. I don't do femmes. That's what I tell myself the whole time she's giving me the eye across the crowded restaurant. Tall and pretty in the average Atlanta way, meaning she'd be a dime in any other city. She's working her tongue on the edge of a half-full martini glass. The pink liquid in the glass sloshes dangerously, but she keeps her eyes on me. From the prop of her hip against the chair she's leaning on, it's obvious she knows she looks good in that tight ass skirt. Yeah. Like, what am I doing? I'm trying to do this thing. Okay. From the prop of her hip against the chair she's leaning on, it's obvious she knows she looks good in that tight ass skirt, blue and high-waisted, clinging to her decent curves in a way that tells the open secret of her G-string underwear. There we go. I can't do thong panties. The idea of something rubbing in my sweaty ass crack all day makes me shudder, and not in a good way. Though, the fleeting thought of her panties, the thin string snuggled between the firm mounds of her ass cheeks, inexplicably makes my mouth dry. I look away from the femme and take a quick gulp of my drink. The drink is cold and strong, just about the only good thing about this evening so far. Coming to the restaurant was a bad idea, but my friend Pauline called me on the way from work saying she was hungry, had a Groupon, and would love to take me out, meaning she wanted me to drive so she couldn't get drunk. So I picked her up from her place and we made our way out into Atlanta nightlife on a Friday night, not thinking of the place, Edgewood, the latest Atlanta it neighborhood, and what that would really mean. What it means is the restaurant that's normally a good place to unwind after a drink or over a drink and good conversation is loud for the DJ playing the latest trap music or top 40 something. It all sounds the same to me. While couples and groups of friends lean on square high tables, trying to seem fuckable to anyone who wants to look. Pauline takes in the whole restaurant, her eyes squinting in annoyance. Her solid body overflows the spindly chair, while a Friday evening outfit of cargo shorts and Hawaiian shirt don't do much to blend her in with the high heels and oiled beard crowd. This was a fucking mistake. She snaps a look at the DJ, as if she could magically destroy him and his music both with her eyes. Yeah, I look up from steering my Moscow Mule with a limp straw, my eyes instantly colliding with the bold browns of the brassy femme in the middle of the restaurant. The friend she's with, equally femme, which could also mean straight as hell, is bouncing her ass to the music and shouting something in the femme's ear while looking toward me. There, a guy in dick-hugging sweatpants is scoping out the restaurant too. He's standing near other bored 20-somethings, draped over the bar and shouting in vain to be heard about the too loud music. His gaze doesn't linger on the femme's friend, but that doesn't stop her from checking him out. The femme looks at the guy, shouts something back to her friend, then goes back to looking at me. I look away quickly, but not before she catches me staring. A smile curves up the corner of her very, very red mouth. You want to leave? Pauline's shout vibrates my eardrums. I shake my head. This is the second place we've been to in the name of trying to use her Groupon. She's completely hooked on those things. The first restaurant we told us and our Groupon to fuck off, and that was after we paid for parking. I skipped lunch at work, so now I'm just hungry enough to deal with this restaurant with its stupidly loud music and the femme trying to visually crawl into my non-existent cleavage. Okay, Pauline says, let's order. When the waitress comes back around, we order, and the cute little thing in black leather shorts flirts with Pauline like her job depended on it. Once we order, Pauline and I sit back to watch the crowd since talking is out of the question. I'm not really in the mood for conversation, so this is good enough for me. The company I work for was just bought by a larger and more aggressive competitor. After months of waiting, the news everybody in the office had been waiting for finally came down. They're slashing half our department and getting rid of the analysts, me included. Let's see. I'm not in the mood to look for another job, but I sure as hell am not ready to live in a cardboard box. Fuck my life. I sucked down the last of my cocktail and signaled the waitress for another. Slow down, damn. You don't have to drink me under the table. Pauline flicks her fingers at my empty cup, although she's already 2 shots of honey whiskey into the evening. We have my car in the expensive ass parking lot around the block, but the meter is for 24 hours, so I have no problem getting us an Uber at the end of the night if we get too drunk. Don't worry about me, I tell Pauline, just as a shadow falls over our table. I think it's a waitress with our drinks. I look up with thanks on my tongue, but it's a tight ass and tight skirt femme. I dart a glance at the table where she's sitting before, but it's empty now, and her friend is at the bar, still shaking her ass to the questionable music, but this time she's draped across sweatpants stick, and he looks just as interested in her as she is in him. I'm leaving, the femme shouts down to me from her sky-high heels, skipping the introductions. But I want to get your number before I go. I want to take you out. I blink at her like she's speaking Croatian, a language I don't know, by the way. Pauline is grinning like a fool. Before I can do or say anything, my ex-friend grabs a pen out of my purse and writes my number down for her. I glower. She knows I don't mess with other femmes. The femme takes the napkin with a nod of thanks to Pauline, but then looks at me, eyebrow raised as if asking to make sure I'm okay with this. I nod, and she gives me a smile full of red lips and white teeth. Then she slides a business card under my empty cup. This is so you'll know who's calling you, is what I think she says, but the music is so damn loud that she could have been reciting her ABCs for all I know. I nod again, and then she's gone. Pauline looks pleased with herself, but she watches the femme go. Nice, she says, and I can easily read the word on her tongue on her lips, because that's her favorite word in the English language next to fuck. I roll my eyes and go back to searching the restaurant for our waitress. I'm getting hungrier and thirstier by the minute. Once the food comes, I can start thinking of excuses to get out of the date with this femme, if she calls. That's it. My internet is really dodgy, so hopefully you can hear me or whatever.
Yeah, it sounded perfectly fine to me. So thank you so much, Fiona. That was wonderful. And I love the cover of your book. It is beautiful. And so Fiona, you have written over 30 books, which is an outstanding accomplishment. So what I would like to know for the audience here, what inspires you to keep writing, especially when some days may be tougher than others when you're developing your ideas and getting your words onto the page. So how do you keep it going? It's amazing.
That's a good question. Sometimes I just don't know. I mean, sometimes I need the money. That's why I keep on writing. But also, too, it does make me happy. It's my therapy. It's my way of sort of interpreting the world around me. And I also love to read about writing. And so sometimes I read something and it sparks like something new and like a new path that I haven't explored before, a new idea or a new way of doing things. So for example, like I usually don't do first person presents, but the story and the short story and the novel end up being first person present. And I love to read it, but I feel like it's really, really difficult to write in that point of view and with that voice. It was a huge challenge for me. And so I thought, let me try something new again to shake up my writing, shake up my this is the type of character I write about. So yeah, so I always find something different, like a different angle to go at. And I'm open to all kinds of inspiration, whether it's through conversation or through history or through, whatever is moving in the world at the moment, and also through travel and food. Those are my two passions. So when I travel, I usually get some ideas. And when I eat something, I'm like, what kind of person would eat something like this? Or like, can this become like a recipe for a book or recipe for a story? So everywhere, I'm just open.
Oh, I love that so much. And I love that you're traveling, and I love food. So that, that, is wonderful. So thank
It's
you.
that universal glue. Everyone loves food. Well, not everyone, most love food.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, thank you so much, Fiona. I know I am so inspired by the breadth of your literary works, and I am so grateful that you have shared your reading with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So at this point, I am going to ask all of the authors if you can share your screens so that we can kind of come together and answer questions from the audience. I've already put, oops, I hope I did, put out to the audience if they can start putting their questions into either the chat feature, the main chat feature. If you're putting your question into the main chat feature, I do want to advise you to make sure that you are, there's a little tab that you can address all of the panelists and the attendees. So you can put your questions out so everybody can see them. Otherwise, there is a Q&A question tab there. And you can put your questions there as well, but only the panelists will be able to see those questions. So I do, since I was just talking with you last, Fiona, I do have a question from, I put a little question out for there's a Facebook group for books, writers, and readers, and there is an Elaine plan that asks if you have any plans for more superhero books coming from her, and because this person apparently really loved A Lover's Mercy. So that reader is asking if you plan to come up with any more of those type of books.
I have no idea, but it helps me to know people actually really enjoy the novels, because I was trying something new again, just open, trying something new with Lover's Mercy and what's the other one? The Power of Mercy. I'm like, wait, what am I talking about? Yeah, so if my publisher is interested in another book, I will be more than happy to write a follow-up to that. I know that it's coming out as an audiobook soon, like both of the books together be in audio form. And so we'll see. I mean, if more people want to hear about these superheroes, just write and let me know, and write my publisher, and also buy the books and tell your friends to buy the books. That always helps.
Yes, please do. And we, for the audience, you may have noticed that I've been putting out the links to all of the books that have been read from here this afternoon, this evening, into the chat box. So you can scroll up or go to your author's Facebook, or excuse me, the links to purchase their books have been put into the chat. So please, please, please go out and buy these books. All right. So I have a question for Ann Shade, or Cindy, and this is coming from Cindy Rizzo. So she says, I love historical fiction and can't wait to read your book. Your reading was wonderful. So she asked if can you talk about what kind of research you did about the period of time you were writing about?
Yes. So most of my research was done online. I did buy a few books on the Harlem Renaissance, but the Schomburg Museum in Harlem has a lot of information. I've delved their site, called and got information where I could, and tried to get as much as I could from actual first-hand experience, like people have written stories or life stories of other people during that time. Uh, just trying, it was a lot of research because I wanted to make sure, one, that I got it right, because I don't want anybody reading it and going, I think that's wrong. But two, to respect the information and the people that it was about. I do, in an offhand way, mention Gladys Bentley, and she was sort of the inspiration for the book. And she also became the inspiration for my book release event that I did, Masquerade book release event that I did a couple of weeks ago. But making sure that I represented the fictional characters as well as the real people during that time represented themselves in a respectful way. But the Schomburg Museum, if you want anything about Harlem Renaissance, the Schomburg Museum is the place to go. The library, you can get anything and everything from there, or just even walking around Harlem. There are still places that still have information about what was there. There's a map of the old Harlem clubs in the streets. So I looked that up to see where clubs were located, where speakeasies and nightclubs, and I mean, all sorts of stuff. So it's fun researching it. I love doing research and I love doing historicals.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Anne. We do have another question. This one's coming from Cheryl Head, and it's addressing all of you. So maybe we can take turns answering this one. So Cheryl says that she loved all the authentic language. Amen for that. So powerful and familiar. So for all, what is your thinking? So sorry, I've just kind of moved to the screen a bit. So what is your thinking on the hashtag own voices writing? And if anybody would like to jump in on that one, or I can start calling out names, whichever. Get that going. Does anyone have an kind of an opinion about own voices movement? And that is, and just for everyone who may not have heard of this, it is own voices was started as a hashtag on social media to signify authors that are writing about characters that they identify with. So whether if it is ethnicity or disability or whatever is going on, something that the character has gone through, the author themselves either share that attribute or have a really close bond with that. So would anybody like to answer how they, there you go, Anne. Thank you. I'm fumbling.
I'll take you out of your misery. For me, I think it was important for representation. I felt like the representation of queer Black women in literature wasn't, there were some great positive ones. Fiona, like I said in the chat, I'm fangirling right now, but there are positive representations, but there was more negative than anything. Queer Black women are either represented as thug criminals, thoughts, just like not good representation. And I wanted to bring to light, and that's why every book I have written and every book from here on will feature queer characters of color. Because I think it's important to have our voice out there to represent our voices in a beautiful, loving, and positive way. That's my contribution because I think it represents me as a bi-queer woman. I don't want someone representing me as this confused, mixed up, curious, straight gay wannabe like some of these bi characters are. So that's where it hits home with me.
Yeah, it's right. We're always told to write what you know. And when you're writing in your own voice, you have that authentic lived in experience that you can actually bring forth into the book, and the readers can find out, what you've grown up with, what your community's like, and what your culture's like. And other people can visit it, but they don't actually live in that culture. So yeah, the own voices thing, I do like that movement. So I try to bring a bit of me in each one of the books that I write and make sure that voice is authentic and real.
I have to say, it was also important for me to have my characters be Black characters of African American descent. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Yes, and so that's why I wrote that. Just to also have that out there. Also, I wrote about my setting is in the Bronx, where I grew up, and you hear so much negative about the Bronx, and I wanted to put it out there that, I grew up in the Bronx, and I loved it. It was a great childhood, and I just remembered so many positives about it. So I also wanted to put that in the book and to have people see a positive side to the Bronx. So yes, that was important for me also.
And I'd like to answer the question with a question.
Oh, thank you, Renee.
Is there a way for anyone to write fiction, especially without, excuse me, without being in their own voice? Is there any way to write a novel with three-dimensional characters where at least one of the characters does not reflect the writer's own experiences? You don't set out to write something that's autobiographical, but you almost can't help it. At least one of your characters starts speaking your mind or doing what you might have done. So Cheryl Head, is it possible for us not to do that?
I think that is a very important question to ask and to try to really understand. Unfortunately, Cheryl is not going to be able to speak with us in the audience, not being a panelist member, but perhaps, that can be something that maybe she either puts in the chat or we can discuss, when you two get together and discuss it. But I do want to point out that with Own Voices, and I've been trying to do a bit of research on it as well, because there was, the reason I had heard about it is because there was a book that I think it was called American Dirt that came out, and there was a lot of speculation on, and the book was about a Hispanic family coming and crossing the Mexican-American border. I have not read the book, so I don't know all the specifics about it, but there were questions about whether the writer, who was not of that ethnicity, not that she did not have the right to write about that. I think authors should be able to write about what they, you write about books so that you can tell stories. But I think it was more about the acclaim and the recognition of this author when there are so many more authors that come from either that background or ethnicity or, whatever that topic is or theme is for the book, that do not get recognized. And I think that's where this Own Voices movement, I think, originally started. It's probably morphed into other things as we go along, but I think it is important that authors are able to, you should be able to write about any stories, and you probably learn something as well as you are delving into things that you may not know personally firsthand. But I do believe that we definitely need to work on getting recognition for authors that are in either marginalized communities, quote unquote minorities, and it's not only in racial aspects, but also in any marginalized area of people's lives, so within the community. Okay, I'm off my soapbox, sorry. So we do surprisingly only have about 9 minutes left. And so I wanted to go through to each author, and I'll start with you, Renee. If you can kind of start talking about if you're working on a new works that are coming out, or where we can find you on social media, which I believe you're very active in. So if you can, if I can turn that back a little bit, but maybe offer since there may be so many more aspiring authors, and I'm so happy to have so many women of color here on one screen for everyone to see. I've I've learned of new authors here myself, but there may be more aspiring authors out there that are trying to get into the publishing world. And I know there's a whole, trying to get into publishing is difficult to begin with, and even more difficult for women of color. But I'd like to hear just briefly how you were able to do it. Like, what was briefly your success story, and then where can we find you on social media and what you're working on next? If we can get that in the next 9 minutes.
My success story. My first book was self-published with Borders Personal Publishing. So with that book tucked under my arm, I went to my first GCLS conference. I had by then written a second book and submitted it to 2 or 3 of the publishers who were attending that conference. And no one was really interested in it. I spoke with one publisher, though, who gave me some very concrete suggestions about rewrites that I could do. Ironically, I've told this story so much, but her chief editor took a meeting with me during brunch and told me that I was going to have trouble getting my book published because no one was really interested in a coming out story about a Black lesbian. So we were sitting at a table eating, and I think if my heels could have put holes in that rug, they would have. 2 minutes after I left, someone who had walked by and just sort of read my face and figured out what was happening called me over, introduced me to her publisher, Kathy Briarrose, and life was good for me from that point on. Kathy invited me to submit my manuscript to her, and so I was with her publishing company, which has now transitioned to Flashpoint Publications. And I invite anybody here, if you know someone who's trying to break in to be published, to please make yourself known, write a letter, a brief email for Flashpoint Publications. I think publisher at Flashpoint Publications. And you will be dealing with a person of honor, a person who will respect you, and a person who has a heck of a lot of energy to help you along. So, just counsel a person who's trying to get started to think, don't give up. Don't let one person's no be the door for you. I dare say I'm the oldest person here on this panel. We've all lived lives where we have experienced these aggressions against us. Some of them have been very subtle. Some of them have not been subtle. Screw them and keep going on. Be persistent. Social media. I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter. More Facebook than Twitter.
Yes, thank you so much, Renee. That was fantastic. Thank you. And Mercedes, can you tell us how you got your start in publishing and where we can, it sounds like you have a work in progress, so you can share with us.
I do, but don't tell my publisher. Yeah, I've just recently started feeling the creative flow a little bit more. And Renee and I are kindred spirits in that Kathy Briarrose and Regal Crest, I will say I appreciate them and Patty Schramm because they would not let me go. Anyone who knows who was there at the beginning of GCLS will remember when I used to do a lot of impromptu poetry and limericks and such about the experience of GCLS. And so Kathy and Patty were always after me. You need to write a book. I need to read your poetry. And I am ashamed to say it took me quite a few years, but they did not relent. And so we have glimpses of a fractured soul. And to go back to that other question that was asked about your own voice, poetry, poets, we write in our own voice, and whether we want to or not, as Fiona said, we're walking around in a thong because it's just all out there, you know. And you can find me on Facebook under Mercedes Lewis. You can find Mercedes Lewis author page. You can find me on WordPress under Mercedes Lewis blog. And you can find me on Twitter under Miss Diva.
Well, thank you, Miss Diva. Okay, Anne, how about you? If you could tell us.
Yes. Well, what am I supposed to be telling you again? Jeez.
Like how you were able to
Yes.
get you into
Yes.
publishing and where we can find you on social media.
Okay.
We know
Sorry,
your
had
book
a
Masquerade
senior
is
moment.
coming out. Nope, it's fine. I should have reminded you. So
I originally, my first book I self-published, and it did okay. It took me a couple of years and getting laid off from a job to finish the next book and present it to Bold Strokes Books, who kindly took me under their wing. And that was Femme Tales, which came out a year ago, and I'm so thrilled and happy about that. And my recommendation would be to not be afraid, to don't let doubt get in your way. And just because a big publishing house may say it's not quite what we're looking for right now, doesn't mean you can't go search some of the smaller publishing houses. I think honestly, the smaller publishing houses will give you more attention, give you the attention you need to craft to help, make you a better author. So, Bella Books, Bold Stroke Books, all those that are the smaller houses, reach out to them, submit your work. I'm proud to be a part of a piece of work that's coming out with Bold Stroke Books this summer. It's called In Our Words, and it's queer stories from BIPOC authors. And they're short stories, and I got to pick the stories. So all of them, they're all, most of them are unknown authors. And some of these stories, I swear I'd rather see them in a whole book than a short story, but we wouldn't be able to fit them in there. And you can find me on Twitter at AnnShade3. I guess there are two other Ann Shades. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and I have a website, Ann Shade Romance, on all three of those. So it's AnnShadeRomance.com for my website. And of course, Bold Stroke Books. I think I answered everything.
yeah, thank you so much, Anne. I really appreciate that. And Regina, can you tell us just really quickly about how you came into publishing? And we are going to go over a little bit on time, but I think this is important. And if you all are willing to stay with us, love to hear from you, Regina.
Yeah, so I probably started in publishing with poetry, having my poems published, and going on from there, having short stories published, like in Zane's Purple Panties, and also in Girls Who Bite, lesbian vampire stories. So that way, and then now with Bella Books, my debut novel. So that's been, it's been a bit of a journey, but I would say just keep at it, write the best that you can, and get it out there. Always write and get it out there. You can find me on Facebook at Regina Jameson, and on Twitter at Jameson Writer. And thank you for having me and for sharing this space with so many great writers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regina. And I really admire that you were a Lambda Literary Fellow and was a participant in one of their writing retreat for.
Yes, I was. In 2014, I was a Lambda Literary Fellow. And I also have some poetry coming out in the spring at Switchgrass Review. So if you want to take a look at some of my poetry, that's coming out.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, Yolanda, it is your turn. If you can let us know how you got into publishing it and kind of share your words of wisdom with us.
It's all my wife's fault. It's all her fault. Because I had several short stories published, but when I tried to distribute longer works, the mainstream houses, all I got back was rejection letters. So I got discouraged. I stopped writing. I kept continuing writing. I stopped submitting. But we went on vacation to Key West one year, and I got back and I wrote a book about it that was inspired by the experience. And she's like, "You should send this in." It's like, "No, I'm tired of hearing no." She's like, "No, really, you need to send it in." So she kept going after me. So I finally did. I submitted it to Bold Strokes, and they said yes. So it became my first book, In Medias Res. So I started then. So that was like, I think 12 years ago. So she always says, "It's because of me that you're here." It's like, I know. But yeah, so, and then I am on Facebook under my name, Yolanda Wallace. And didn't write a whole lot last year because I had some medical issues, but I'm back writing now. And I've got 3 different ideas kicked around my head. The one that's getting to me the most is inspired by my godmother. She is in her 80s and she's run over 100 marathons. So I'm writing about a marathoner. She's visually impaired and she needs someone to guide her through the Boston Marathon. So
wow,
that's got my heart right now. So like I said, she's 80 something. She still calls me all the time. She was an English teacher in high school. And she's another reason that I am a writer, because in her class, we had to write a theme every week, 500 words on any subject of our choice. So every week for 4 years, I got to practice.
Wow, that is so inspiring. And please do write that book and finish it, because I can't even run down the block. So I need some inspiration.
Gotcha.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Yolanda. Okay, and of course, Fiona, if you can share with us as well how you got started into publishing, and a lot of things to talk about. Thank you, if you can share with us.
Sure. I don't know how long this was, but I finished my book and sent it to an agent, and she said it was not that great, but it was nice that she took the time to actually like scribble all over it and give me some pointers. And it was decent after I made these changes, but then I went to, I think, the Saints and Sinners conference, and I listened to a talk by, I think, Catherine Forrest. And she gave me some really wonderful editing tips. And so after going to this conference and hearing her, I actually almost wrote the entire book. Then I sent it to my agent, and then she sold it within like a couple of months to Kensington Books in New York. So it was, I feel like it was just at the right time, in the right moment kind of thing. And I think it was just more so luck than anything else, because it's like this book about a Black lesbian coming out in New York and going to see her family in Jamaica, like so super random. And yeah, it was like a lightning striking, I felt like. I think if I try to submit something like that now, I'm not sure I would even get the same amount of traction that it did. But in terms of what I have coming out next, I have a book coming out called House of Agnes in June, with Ilva Publishing. And that's about a madam who has this huge empire and a journalist who's trying to bring her down. So that'll be coming out in June. And then I also have a novella in a collection called Love, Blood, and Sanctuary. And it's a novella, a paranormal romance about a minor West African deity who meets love of her life, and then, drama happens. And those actually are both coming out in June. I am on social media at Fiona Zed everywhere, like Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and that's at FIONAZEDDE.
Awesome. Oh, goodness. Well, I want to thank each one of you, amazingly talented, beautiful people, for joining us today. I appreciate that you have shared your stories, poetry, and your time with us during our GCLS virtual series. I'm sure the audience, if I could speak for them, they're inspired, I'm inspired, and we're all inspired by not only your immense talent, but the hard work and dedication it took to bring your well-written works to all of us lucky readers. So thank you so much. You know, based on our panelists here, we have a previous teacher, a military veteran, a master's prepared poet, novelist, literary award winners, and world travelers and lovers of food. Thank you very much. There is so much immense talent out there, and representation, as we all know, is so important. And readers want to see themselves. They want to see themselves in doing amazing things, having positive stories about themselves. So please keep writing. Don't stop writing. Novel 40, 45, you just keep going. And please send in your books and your works in for publishing so that we can get our hands on them. All right, so thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful meeting. I know that a lot of you have other engagements, and I appreciate your time here. And good luck to you all. And thank you, audience, for joining us. I hope you will join us for the rest of our GCLS virtual series throughout the year. And for instance, in April, we are going to have an event dedicated to our poets. April is National Poetry Month, and so I'm so excited for that event. We will be having games and all kinds of things and other panels for this virtual series. So, all right, thank you all again, and I'm going to stop rambling and say goodbye to you all. Hopefully, you all can become Facebook friends, and we can all have a party later. All right, stay safe, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Maria.
Thank
Bye,
you. Bye.